There we are. Thank you. Right. Well, Noswathar, welcome to the Senedd. And I know there are some Senedd members who are hovering at the back, and there's some others I know will join us shortly. But my name is Russell George. I'm the member of the Senedd for Montgomeryshire, and I'm the sponsor of this event this evening. Doesn't mean I've organised much. That's pretty much down to Dan here, sat to my right. But for me, I think there's two parts to this evening. Dan will say differently, but one is to celebrate Owain Glyndwr Day, and the second is to launch the exhibition of Llys Glyndwr by Dan Llywelyn Hall, which you can see pictured over to my left as well. And so tonight is a bit of a celebration in two different ways, I suppose. But I met Dan 12 months ago, and we met in Llansilin, first at the church, where we met with the church committee. The church committee there are very keen to set up a cultural and heritage centre, and the church is just a short distance away from the site of Sycharth, where Owain Glyndwr lived with his wife Margaret, I think, is that right? And 11 children. But the castle there was burned down in 1405. I keep looking at Dan to see if he's confirming this as well. I'm looking around. Is that right? There we are. And but what's important is, and of course, when we met at the site, Dan then unveiled his painting, or a depiction of Owain Glyndwr, and at the site as well, which is very special as well. About 12 months from now, I guess it was. And then we discussed potentially having an event here at the Senedd where the picture could be displayed or depicted here as well here at the Senedd. So to me, it's also very important not only to think about our cultural heritage centre based in Llansilin, but also access to the site as well, because I think having access to historical sites that link to such important parts of our history are really important. And I'm happy to support any initiative as well, which makes the site at Sycharth more accessible as well. With that, I can only also say that before I hand over to Dan, that Dan is a very talented and well-known for his landscape and portrait paintings. So it was good to get to know Dan at that point as well, and to be here this evening. So over to you, Dan.
Diolch, Russell. Croeso cynnes, bawb. Particularly big warm thanks to Senedd members who have come this evening, considering this very place is the origins of or the birth child, brainchild, if you like, of Owain Glyndwr. You know, it's nice to acknowledge him, I would say. Anyway, my project, as Russell's enlightened you there, is to do with the court of Glyndwr. So it's the extra people who were on the kind of peripheries, I suppose, of his time, life and times, and who helped with the uprising. And these were people who were both in the literary circles, in the governance on both sides of the border, Welsh and English. And some would have been working for the Crown, some would have been very much supporters of an independent Wales and had paid no homage to the king at the time. So it was a very, there's a hotbed, melting pot really of kind of activity, and very quickly Glyndwr, had to assemble this cast of characters to start his uprising. And he needed as much widespread influence as he could get. And remember now that we're in a time where getting around the country is not as probably easy as it is today, actually, to get into Cardiff. But, it was extraordinary the distance they traversed, and how Glyndwr himself managed to get from one part of the northern extremities of Wales into the south, seemingly effortlessly. And there are these various accounts and anecdotes you can read about him doing so. Anyway, there's someone who's going to talk much better about this later. I'm just going to tell you a little about what I've done with the paintings. So this selection over here There's not many, but it's the kind of beginnings, the blossomings really of a project that's been simmering for a while, and it's to do with unearthing the faces really of these characters. And I've been verging on obsessed really about how I can depict them and what I can use to find the features and the characters. And you know, you've got to dig extremely deep into very kind of very distant past, very kind of murky waters to kind of find the faces of these characters. So some of these figures I've got here, I'm just going to read this out for me from a till receipt. So we have Sir John Scudamore, which we're going to hear a bit more about later with Robert here. I think he's the guy on the left there with the green sort of top tunic, whatever you might call it at the time. He was an English landowner who was the constable for the royal castles in South Wales. And somehow or other, he found himself as part of the uprising, fought with Glyndwr in 1402, and then in the end, actually, married Glyndwr's daughter. You know, so he set up at Kentchurch Court, where to this day relatives of Glyndwr can be found and who are living there. And if you want to go there, then if you have to have a wedding, I'm afraid it's not kind of open house policy. So it's quite a difficult place to visit. But allegedly, Glyndwr slept in the bedrooms above, and there's even a kind of a escape tower sort of thing where apparently he made a quick hop, skip, and jump when they came looking for him. Another figure there I find quite interesting on the return, the smaller sort of drawings there, the two. One of them is Rhys Gethin, and he was Owain's standard bearer, and sort of a leading general, a figurehead who kind of took everyone right to the forefront. He was the kind of, if you like, the face of the campaigns in some ways, allegedly, and he was also possibly the grandson of David ap Griffith, who you all would know is the one of the Princes of Wales from the 13th century of the House of Gwynedd. Another interesting character, not amongst these actually, but if you want to come and see him, he's in my studio in Llanfasyn. Long way to go to look at one, but Hopkin ap Thomas, I found him very interesting because he was the sort of the cultural attaché of Glyndwr, lover of the arts and sort of anything to do with the literary side of things, including the Llyfr Gwyn Rhydych and the Llyfr Coch Hergest, the Red Book of Hergest, White Book of Rhydych, which were some of the earliest Welsh language manuscripts. So apparently he was very much central to them. And it's just a great bibliophile, I suppose, and patron who interpreted Glyndwr's prophecies, you know, who made sure that Glyndwr had kind of the right footing to set off as the rightful Prince of Wales. Anyway, that's enough from me on this. You please have a look at them afterwards. There's a selection there, and we're going to make a book of this a bit later on. It's a project which is rolling out. So I'd hand you to Robert Minhinnick now, who's going to read his latest poems on the subject.
Just want to say there are translation headphones here on the chairs and tables as well around, and so anyone that's speaking tonight can speak in Cymraeg or English, but please be aware. Do we need to check how these work? You just open them up and they should come on automatically. Is that right? Yep. Open them up and they should come on automatically, and you can just change the volume by turning the button there.
Diolch yn fawr am y gwahoddiad. Thank you so much for the invitation. Delighted to be part of Dan's project. I chose to write about Sir John Scudamore, an English landowner from Herefordshire who acted as constable and steward of a number of royal castles in South Wales. He was active in fighting with the Welsh in 1402, and he was still living in 1432 when it was discovered he had married Alice, daughter of Owain Glyndwr. So you can imagine John Scudamore as a character in, say, Pobl y Cwm, a big, long and involved backstory to his life, both sides of the border. Thus, my poem is called Sir John Scudamore in the Shapeshifter's Country, Shapeshifter's Kingdom. I'll tell you where the border runs, a line dividing my soul, one side or the other. To be honest with myself, I must inhabit both. Yes, they strip me of all warrants, but a night still, and it's by night's moves I live, because the crafts of chess mean a choice of war or witchery. Alice I love, her sister Catherine, tower entombed behind iron-wrought walls in an alien state, ancient yet born today. Once Owain was my enemy, yet now he is an idea that can never be lost. A shadow through the castle and refugee in his own vineyard, who has become history's phantom. Owain, the inheritor of the shapeshifter's kingdom. Yet how long must his people wait for such an idea to transubstantiate? Another Arthur? We are a nation that always grieves for a ghost. And there is a translation of a line in a poem about Catherine Glyndwr, Alice's sister, he hen Eleni Gannet. She is old, but yet born this year. What we were hoping was that Minna Elving would read her own poetry today, but she's indisposed. Sorry about that. So I'm going to read a poem by Minna herself, and it's a recent poem. It's called Today's Land. It's about Palestine, and there's a great deal about Wales and Palestine that Minna, I know, believes exists. And it is perhaps increasingly close. But this is Minna's visit to Palestine. The poem is called Today's Land. Further on in our journey, we come to a region breathtakingly barren, yet brandish our banners, letter after letter that spell the names of every vanished village, victimized and vilified forever. No longer are there wheat fields, but cactus forests and pine trees supplicant to the wind. The green world is retreating as if a testament to the desecrated mosque. Judgment is a fist that renders ruin, and a lament, Baludi, Baludi, for the homes that once were. There, beside that tree, sighs one woman, that's where I was born. Her words pinched by the wind. And next to our oven was where I was nursed. But today, not even a house remains, nor a cradle. Only this exile we revile. We have grown old with our own history. There are some who tell stories and some who listen to stories. But every day we realize we must weep in our woe for this weaponry, while dawn's iron dew falls from the iron sky. But that's how our life must continue in this world. My own second poem is about Ellen, Owain's mother, and it will be read by somebody else. I'm delighted to say. It will be read by Laura Wainwright, who's here. Laura is an academic, a poet, a painter, and a songwriter whose work and works for the NHS if she has any time off. But she has an exciting gig in Newport on October the 12th. I'm delighted to say that, that Laura is, I am collaborating with Laura on a joint publication of poetry and art, her own art. This is called Thrall, and it's due next year from 7th Quarry Press. Laura Wainwright, please.
Very pleased to read this, privileged to read this poem by Robert Minhinnick. Ellen. Ellen verch Thomas ap Llywelyn, mother of Owain Glyndwr. We owe Owain all. We owe Owain nothing. And where the olives stood in East Coed, our wounds still unstaunched. It may be difficult to tell from these rags of regality, but I've watched as all our little kingdoms are devoured by settlers, flaunting family armor. Unstoppable as the locusts of Gaza, their progress west. Once accents meant attitude. Now words themselves build borders. But where could we go with the sea at our backs? This is the ancient story that will happen forever. East Coed will become a mosaic where no man's memory speaks to another. Its women must pay the price for history, although men manufacture it. Born to entitlement, our gleaming sons. But grief always their first camp follower. We owe Owain nothing. We owe Owain all. And where the olives stood in East Coed, our wounds still unstaunched. But if you choose, ignore this witness with her sheen of olive wood from a shattered grove. Ah, the olive trees of East Coed and Caer Wendros, now merely bushels of bloody firewood. Yet, Owain, my own, how might I recognize him? Yes, Owain won, but then was overwhelmed. Main grieve, Iolo writes of Owain, strong and slim beyond my thighs. But remember, if they're paid enough, our poets always pick the best of things. We are a country of stillborn myth. The legend was 4 centuries ago. 100 families came over with the bastard. And look what we've become. Yes, we took their silver groats and fought their wars. But Henry and all the others was never my sovereign. Not in the soul of me. But it's true, they hate us as if it was ordained. Because we had different names for our woods. Did they never think that was because we possessed different words for our trees? And they will always despise us for that. We learned their language, but they make a mockery of ours, thinking us goats, chewing cinders and thistles. So heed, goats, I say. Goats eat gorgeous belladonna, the black-berried nightshade. Some survive such appetite, while others lie twitching in their own froth. Owain, my own, only his absence chafes. Yet Dafydd says stars too are distant, but thrill us like cold nails of sunshine. Stars to us, he sings, are cherries of the night, while numberless the gems of Orion's harness. But remember, if they're paid enough, our poets always pick the best of things. We owe Owain all. We owe Owain nothing. But where the olive stood, the wounds are still unstaunched. Thank you. Diolch.
I'd like to introduce now Rhun Emlyn here, who's going to come and talk to you a bit about the court itself and the history of the courts. Some very fascinating insights here and how Rhun has managed to unearth information very much in very recent times, stuff which you'll find out a bit more in the course of this next year, I suppose. Rhun Emlyn.
Wel, diolch yn fawr iawn, Dan. Diolch am y croeso. A diolch yn fawr iawn am gychwyn y prosiect yma. Ac i Russell George am noddi'r digwyddiad hefyd. Ac mae o yn brosiect cyffroes iawn. Cael meddwl am y bobl bwysig yma o amgylch Glyndwr sydd hyd yn hyn heb dderbyn llawer o sylw. It's very exciting to be here tonight and being part of this project with this focus on the individual who is central to the Glyndwr Rebellion and central to Glyndwr's vision for Wales as well. So thanks, Dan, and thanks to Russell George for sponsoring this event. Ond wrth gwrs, Glyndwr ei hun sy'n aml yn cael y sylw. When we think about the rebellion, we of course pay attention to Owain Glyndwr himself. And that's clearly appropriate. The rebellion began when he was proclaimed Prince of Wales by his followers on the 16th of September 1400. Many were inspired to join the rebellion in order to follow him specifically. And his forceful personality clearly directed the course of the rebellion, and he succeeded in making his claims to the title Prince of Wales effective by setting up a government to rule his principality, a government that received international recognition across Europe. And yet, the rebellion was more than just Owain Glyndwr himself. It wasn't a one-man show, and neither was his campaign one to secure justice for one man only, but to address the complaints of people across the length and breadth of Wales. It was a truly national rebellion that arose from the frustrations of the Welsh as a whole and received widespread support also from across the country. Nid Glyndwr yn unig oedd yn gyfrifol am gychwyn y gwrthryfel. The rebellion began when 15 prominent men from across the northeast gathered together at Owain Glyndwr's home at Glyndwrdwy. And together, 15 of them proclaimed Glyndwr Prince of Wales. And in the following days, they were joined by hundreds of men and women of all walks of life as they attacked Rhuthun and a number of towns around that area. So there were plenty of angry men and women around Rhuthun in 1400. And simultaneously, Glyndwr's cousins, Rhys and Gwilym ap Tudur, rebelled on Anglesey. And over the next few years, the rebellion spread to every corner of Wales and beyond. And so you had David Perrott, a successful merchant from Tenby, joining the rebellion. Or going to another corner of Wales, John ap Hywel, the charismatic abbot of Llantarnam, so between Newport and Cwmbran today, whose sermons were encouraging people to join up and be part of Glyndwr's battles, and who was himself killed in the fighting. Beyond Wales, we can think of people like the radical farmer and preacher Walter Britt in Herefordshire. And of course, as this project will show later on over the course of its life, that the rebellion received support from outside not just Wales or even England, but also places like France as well. So people flocked in their thousands to join the rebellion. And we have some snapshots of the level of support the rebellion received. So on the screen, it's just the top of a document that's in the National Archives in London, which lists the names of over 1,000 supporters of the rebellion in Flintshire alone. We've got a similar document from Anglesey with over 2,000 names of men and some women who surrendered on Anglesey when the Royal Army took over control of the island. A mae'n wych gallu gweld enwau yr unigolion yma, bod yr unigolion yma yn neidio oddi ar tudalennau hanes. A maen nhw'n bobl amrywiol iawn, ble maen nhw'n dod, rhannau gwahanol o'r gymdeithas. You had nobles and peasants, farmers and townsfolk, bishops and merchants. All of these men and women contributed to the rebellion in their own different ways. But some of them were influential figures close to Glyndwr, whose ideas forged the vision that he created for Wales, and whose actions shaped the course of the rebellion. And these were the members of Llys Glyndwr, of Glyndwr's court. And we can see the portraits of some of them in this exhibition this evening. Now, Glyndwr, as prince, held his royal court in the majestic and the dramatic surroundings of Harlech Castle. And this is where his family would have lived as well. We've heard his name, name of his wife tonight, Margaret Hanmer, his daughter Catrin, and you can see here Margaret Jones's portrayal of them at home at Harlech. But out here tonight in the Senedd, I wanted to focus briefly just on some members of Glyndwr's parliament and government specifically. Fel brenhinoedd ar draws Ewrop yn yr Oesoedd Canol, mi nath Owain Glyndwr alw Senedd i gyfarfod i drafod materion pwysig. We know that Glyndwr called at least 3 parliaments. In the summer of 1404 at Machynlleth, which you can see the Parliament House here today. In July and August 1405 at Harlech, and a 3rd Parliament in March 1406, possibly again at Machynlleth. So this was Glyndwr engaging with communities across his principality, consulting with these communities in the process of his rule. And 4 representatives were sent from each comote, so quite a small area in Wales, under Glyndwr's control. Now, I know there are plans currently to expand the Senedd to 96 members. I know some people feel we already have enough politicians. But if we were to follow Glyndwr's principle, though, of having 4 members per comote, the Senedd wouldn't be expanded to 96 members, but to 592. So we've got some support for that idea. So Russell George, he's disappeared. Oh, there you go, hello. So you wouldn't be the only member for Montgomeryshire, you'd be one of 52 members for Montgomeryshire. I live in Ceredigion, and so Elin Jones would share her work with 39 other MSs if we were to follow Glyndwr's policy. I'm sure there would be some complaints if we were to propose expanding the Senedd to 592 members. But what I'd like to do quickly is just to talk about the contribution of 2 individuals who would have been present in Glyndwr's parliaments. Y cyntaf ar rhain, un o fy hoff gymeriadau hanesyddol, mae rai cyfaddef, rhywun un o'r bobl fyswn ni'n hoffi mynd nôl i'w cyfarfod. First of these two individuals I want to talk about was Gruffydd Young. There's no portrait of him yet, but there will be one on the way. So he was a cleric. He was from the same area as Glyndwr himself. Might have known each other, or families would have known one another, definitely. He had a successful career in the church before the rebellion. He'd studied at a university, possibly Oxford. He'd graduated as Doctor of Canon Law, of Church Law, so was among the educated elite of his day. And he rose in the ranks of the church. By the time of the rebellion, he was responsible for running the Diocese of St. David's in the absence of the bishop. We don't know when exactly he joined the rebellion, but he became a key figure in Llys Glyndwr. So Glyndwr was in the process of state building, and Gruffydd Young had a key contribution in this process, using his experience in the church. So by 1404, he had become Glyndwr's chancellor, heading up the administration of the government of the principality and overseeing the work of writing Glyndwr's official documents. He would also be part of Glyndwr's personal council, advising Glyndwr on a regular basis. So there's quite a lot of responsibility on his shoulders, especially if we imagine, of course, that this was a new principality. He was trying to do something that was new. And there was more responsibility to come. He was used a number of times as ambassador to the King of France, Charles VI. And this on the screen, I've shown a portrayal again from Margaret Jones of Gruffydd Young with his fellow ambassador, John Hanmer, heading to France to meet the King of France. He was successful in his negotiations, securing a treaty with France, and this led to French troops landing in Wales to support the rebel army. And if you think about the contribution of these people, Gruffydd Young was probably also a central figure in developing Glyndwr's comprehensive and far-reaching vision for Wales, as outlined in the Penna letter. So you can see on the far side for me there, the Penna letter in the Archive National in Paris, a letter from Glyndwr outlining his vision. An independent church for Wales, 2 universities, a firm footing, financial footing for the Welsh Church, jobs for Glyndwr's supporters. Gruffydd Young knew exactly what was required if Glyndwr's principality was to succeed and to thrive. And he was rewarded for his hard work as well. He was appointed to be the new Archbishop of St. David's by Glyndwr, which would mean ruling over the church, not just in Wales, but over west of England as well, if Glyndwr had his way. By this point, unfortunately, the rebellion was gradually failing, so poor Gruffydd Young never got to take on his new role. But he continued, didn't give up, and continued to support Glyndwr as ambassador for years to come, lobbying the French for support for years after the rebellion had effectively come to an end. And I suppose a strange fact is that to honour his status when he was in exile then in Europe, he was appointed Bishop of Hippo in North Africa by the Pope, giving him a nominal title of bishop, even though officially he couldn't really visit North Africa. So that's the first individual. Gruffydd Young, I think, is quite central, one of the central characters of Glyndwr's court, of Llys Glyndwr. Ac yn ail, eisiau troi at rywun sy'n wyllio I Geredigion lle ydw i'n byw. And with the second individual I want to talk about, so you've got Rhys Ddu, or Rhys the Swarthy, so that possibly helps with your depiction of him. We see a different type of individual and a different type of contribution to the rebellion. So this image on the screen is of Rhys Gething, so one of the other members of the court we can see in the exhibition, but a similar type of man to Rhys Ddu. Rhys Ddu, and you can go visit see Rhys Ddu after I finish speaking, was an uchelwr, a Welsh nobleman from a prominent Ceredigion family. He grew up and lived in Morfa Bychan. So if you're familiar with Aberystwyth, there's a caravan park currently in Morfa Bychan. So I'm not quite sure what Rhys Ddu would make of that. But it's a few miles south of Aberystwyth. That's where he lived. Before the rebellion, he was an experienced soldier, but more prominently, he was important in local government. So he'd risen to become Sheriff of Cardiganshire, responsible for ensuring justice and governing the county on behalf of the King of England. And he developed a reputation for efficiency, bordering on ruthlessness. And I think I'm being a bit kind with Rhys Ddu there. And yet, when Glyndwr and his followers first appeared on the borders of Ceredigion in 1401, Rhys Ddu decided to join them. And he contributed all his military administrative skills in the service of the rebellion. He led contingents of men from the county on campaigns for Glyndwr. So, for example, in 1403, they travelled south to capture Newcastle Emlyn and Carmarthen. And when Aberystwyth Castle was captured by Glyndwr in 1404, Rhys Ddu was given the responsibility of keeping the castle for Glyndwr, using all the experience he previously had governing the county on behalf of the King of England to governing it on behalf of Glyndwr. And Rhys Ddu must have been one of the 40 men representing Ceredigion or Cardiganshire in Glyndwr's parliament. When the English army arrived at the gates of Aberystwyth in 1407 with their cannons, it was Rhys Ddu's role to try and keep the castle for Glyndwr. At some point, he decided he had to surrender the castle, but was told in no uncertain terms by Glyndwr that if he surrendered, he'd be executed by Glyndwr himself. And so, no surprise, the siege lasted for a year longer. Rhys Ddu managed to escape after Aberystwyth finally captured and continued to rebel even when the rest of Cardiganshire had surrendered. And when he was eventually captured in 1409, he was taken to London and hung, drawn and quartered, and his body sent to different towns across England. So we have two men there, dau ddyn gwahanol efo'u cyfraniad I Owain Glyndwr. So two men, but in a sense that give us a sense of the contribution that different individuals played within the rebellion, showing their commitment to the rebellion, but also, hopefully, the value of looking at and acknowledging these different members of Llys Glyndwr and these different people who will come to life over the course of this project. Yes.
Well, that's the formalities over there, and hopefully you've got a picture now of what the court is beginning to look like, and how these figures were so vital, really, in the north and south, and across the divide as well. You know, does anybody have any questions?
Yeah, good question. I thought someone might ask that. You'll have to. Margaret Jones passed away actually, so you can't ask Margaret Jones, unfortunately. I'm not sure. I suppose it would have been displayed on various ships. Yes, so this is sort of. Yes, it's not. Well, it's not as impression. It might have. Yes, yeah. But very good question.
Can you hear me?
Yes,
In your
I think
first
so.
poem, Robert, you mentioned something about a sort of dichotomy. My soul is here, my soul is there. Can't remember what the line was now. So I thought, what sort of half of me's here and half of me's there. Either side. I can't remember that exact word.
But that's about Sir John Scudamore.
Yeah.
That's about Sir John Scudamore. I read that poem first on Saturday when I went up on the train from Bridgend to Shrewsbury and then to Llanfyllin. And we went all along the border, and I thought of my daughter who used to live in Clydach, which is 3 miles into England, but they never knew where the English and Welsh borders were. We always thought Clydach was within Wales, but it's 3 miles within England, and that was why, because the border, if you look at the border, it goes in and out, and of course, Sir John Scudamore was compromised by the fact that he loved Llys Glyndwr and he married her, and he fought to the Welsh, but I think at times he also fought against the Welsh. I'm not quite sure, but and that's why I said they all belong in a soap opera like Poblakum.
Yeah, well, mine was slightly more metaphysical observation. I don't know where it comes from, but another said that part of the problem of being Welsh is that you're living in reality, but at the same time you've also got one foot in the abyss of Avalon, and so it's living in reality and living in a dream world at the same time. That's what it called to me.
Well, I don't think you have to be Welsh to do that. I'm sure that's human, surely.
Well, I think she was saying it was a particular trait of our character.
Gymraeg neu'n Saesneg? Right. Beth digwyddodd i'r Owain yn y diwedd, reit yn y diwedd, achos rhywys i bod hanesydd ddim yn cant y cant siŵr beth digwyddodd iddo fe. So, beth yw dy farn di ar beth digwyddodd ar ôl y chwyldro?
Mae dal yn byw yn Cwle.
Mae
dal yn byw yn Cwle, mae'n olgo.
Ydy wir?
Wel, dyna'r, wrth gwrs, beth sy'n, da ni ddim yn gwybod, dyfalu yw popeth mewn gwirionedd. Mae'r rhaid i fod mae'r bosib bod wedi marw rhyw 7 am mlynedd ar ôl diflannu. Mae wedi bosib i byw, un syniad i bod yn byw efo John Scudamore, rhaid i fi. Felly, yw un syniad felly. Sorry? So, felly un syniad i bod yn mynd i fyw efo ferch Alys a John Scudamore yn cuddio yn fanna. Mae'n bob math o sanisio. There's a Jack of Kent. There's a portrait now of a man called Jack of Kent who they believe might have been Glyndwr. In a sense, it's all guesswork. Dyfalu i gyd. Ond mewn ffordd, mae hwnna'n cyfrannu at y chwedloniaeth yma o Glyndwr. Dyn ni ddim yn gwybod. Does gennym ni ddim syniad. Ond hyd yn oed ar ôl i Glyndwr siŵr o fod farw, mi oedd pobl eraill yn parhau. Oedd ei fab Myredydd yn parhau ymladd y gwrthryfel am flynyddoedd wedyn. A nifer o unigolion eraill. Yes, yes. I suppose there are all sorts of sightings and stories coming from different parts of Wales, and he was for years, on the run, hiding in the mountains, but still had a number of loyal followers with him, and had these sort of guerrilla warfare in a sense after his principality had effectively come to an end. So he was here, there, and everywhere for years.
Hi, question for Dan. Because I don't believe we have any actual images from Owain, apart from the one you might refer to, which is in Kent Church Court, and that I think might be Owain. So I just wondered how when you were creating your images, what kind of inspiration you had for that?
Well, the only image of him, depiction of him, the contemporary one, is on the seal that's used on the Penal letter that went to France, which is now in the French archives. But and everything really has grown from that, to be honest. And of course, this mysterious portrait in Kent Church Court which I'm convinced is him, because I think that, you know, you don't keep an heirloom like that sort of. It's such a guarded sense of the whole place, really, and I do think there's still a family secret there at Kenchurch Court. You know, there's some talk of how the body was dug up and moved to this secret location that they would have kept very much in the family. You know, and I think that these things would have stayed there somewhere or other, you know. But no, we don't have any. There's no images at all, and indeed of this court, I mean, absolute zero. You know, as far as I know, you know better. But Rhun here is very much exploring these archives right in the moment, and he's just unearthing stuff within the past week. You said you went up to Hereford. You've gone through the archives, so he's finding stuff right now. You know, that there's not known of these very characters. So there's still flesh to be put on these bones, I think. But in terms of the visualization of them, their dreams, they're a bit like William Blake when he made these visionary heads, and he did one of Glyndwr, actually. William Blake made one of him, and these semi-mystical figures, but I think they just speak back to you eventually. They kind of, you know, you look at them, and as you're working on them, eventually they start saying something that you think is you know, expressive of their character. Like when Robert wrote that poem on Scudamore, I'd done 4 versions of Scudamore before, and I wrote it, and immediately I thought he'd give me this line, this division of the black line, and I thought, you know, that's got to be etched on the face there somewhere. So, you know, you'll see there it's physically kind of there, and I've left it there. So really, they come from here, but they do start giving back, I think. You know, that sounds a bit cryptic, but you might find some stuff eventually.
Unfortunately, it's probably, yeah, finding more people for you to, so more work for you after all.
Oh, and I don't mind that. You know, it's thrilling, really. It's like a, you know, big soap opera emerging.
Diolch yn fawr iawn am yr cyflwyniadau. Mabon ap Gwynfor, dwi'n aelod o'r Senedd dros 2 Meirionnydd. Dwi'n ffodus iawn i gael byw yng Nghnwyd, cartre ar Davies, ac bosib rhannau o diroedd Glyndwr gerllaw, ac mae Pennal a Harlech wrth gwrs yn yr etholaeth yn tawaith am hynny. 2 gwestiwn yn gyntaf, yn benna i Rhun. Y cytundeb tripartite yma oedd Glyndwr wedi arwyddo, mae'r ffiniau yn kind of gwneud synwyr, tan bod rhywun yn gweld bod yna spur bach mynd fyny am Macclesfield neu rhywle. Mae'n batrwm bach od iawn am ryw reswm, lle mae dan cytundeb Glyndwr bod wedi tynnu darn o dirfan. Pam bod y ffin yna yn cyrraedd, pam bod nhw wedi penderfynu ar y ffiniau ddaru nhw wneud yn y cytundeb trifflig yna. Ond yr ail un, mae nifer ohono ni wedi cael yn magu efo Glyndwr yn enwedig heina ohono ni sydd ddigon o ffodus i fod wedi cael y magu trwy gyfrwng Gymraeg. Ond mae lot o bobl wedi colli neu ddim wedi cael dod i adnabod Glyndwr. Ond wrth gwrs, fel rhan o hanes Glyndwr, mae'r gymdeithas eingl Gymreig yn andros o bwysig yn ei frwydr os. Di rhywun yn ystyried ardal bro magwraeth Glyndwr, teulu Hanmer oedd mor bwysig, a meddwl tybed fetsych chi ymestyn a gymelaethu ychydig ar bwysigrwydd y gymuned eingl Gymreig i ymgyrch Glyndwr.
Ie, gallaf yn sicr. Felly, mae'r cytundeb tridarn yn ddiddorol iawn i ateb y cwestiwn cyntaf. Felly, cytundeb tridarn yn Saesneg, the tripartite indenture ydy'r enw Saesneg. A cynllun Glyndwr i rannu Cymru a Lloegr hefyd, jyst i rhai sydd ddim yn ymwybodol. Gyda cytundeb Ffrainc i rannu nid yn unig Cymru ond Lloegr hefyd. A mae'n gynllun diddorol, mae'n dangos pa mor uchelgeisiol oedd gwrthryfel Glyndwr. Ond hefyd mae'r ffin yn ddiddorol, yndi yn sicr. Mewn ffordd, mae'n dilyn rhyw gyfeiriadau chwedlonol am onenau meigion lle na frwydr i fod wedi cael ei frwydro ac yn y blaen. Mae'n ddiddorol bod chi'n nodi Macclesfield. O teulu yr Hanmers yw'r wreiddiol yn dod o Macclesfield. Dwi'n gwybod os yna'r arwyddocad i hynny, oedd yr Hanmers yn wreiddiol wedi symud i Gymru yn dilyn y goncwest. Dwi'n meddwl mae'n eitha amwys, mae'n eitha feg yn ydi ar y pwynt yna, ond mewn ffordd, mae'n dangos sydd y Glyndwr yn ymwybodol o beth oedd angen i'w wneud mwyn llwyddo yn y gwrthryfel. Ond i ateb yr ail gwestiwn i fynd am Rhanmyrs eto, da ni'n gallu meddwl am gwrthryfel Glyndwr fel gwrthryfel oedd yn apelio yn unig ar gyfer rhai oedd yn Gymreg, a'i cundadau wedi bod yn Gymru ers cenedlaethau. Ond wrth gwrs, oedd nifer o gefnogwyr mwyaf blaenllaw gwrthryfel yn dod o deuluoedd oedd dim ond yn ddiweddar wedi symud i Gymru, fel teulu Hanmer oedd yn dod o Macclesfield, fel y teulu Pulston. O'n i'n sôn am David Perrott, a teulu Perrott oedd yn byw yn ardal Dinbych y Pysgod. Yma Nghaerdydd oedd gan Glyndwr llawer o gefnogaeth, gan bobl oedd efo'i cundeidiau yn dod o ran gwahanol o Loegr, ac eto wedi rhoi i cefnogaeth i'r gwrthryfel. Felly, yn sicr, mae'r elfen yna yn allweddol. A gafodd y gwrthryfel a llawer o gefnogaeth ar hyd y ffin, ac i mewn i Loegr hefyd. Felly, oedd yn wrthryfel cenedlaethol Gymreig, ond roedd na ddimensiwn oedd pobl oedd allai cundeidiau ddim yn Gymru, ond oedd yn byw yng Nghymru, yn gallu gweld ei weledigaeth ac yn gallu rhoi i cyfraniad a'i cefnogaeth i'r gwrthryfel hefyd.
Well, enjoy the exhibition. Tea and coffees and some Welsh cakes over there. So thank you all. Diolch bawb for coming tonight. And diolch Rhun, Robert, Laura. And thank you so much, Russell, George, for sponsoring this evening. So we hope to keep the story alive. And the Owain Glyndwr Society, Gareth is there if you want to join. Go and see him this evening. Gareth Jones will take your subscriptions. Keep the name and spirit alive. So from the Senedd, diolch i ti, diolch bawb. That's for that.